Good evening. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you being here. So what we have planned is we're going to read the proclamation as I wrote it for last Tuesday at the board meeting. And then we're going to take audience participation. We're going to write down the stuff. Bobby's going to record everything so that if there's some really good points, I know Mr. Greg will have some. We'll talk to him about it. Anyway, we will then include those in the proclamation that we're going to send off the phone. And then we should have it published several days, I do believe, Bobby, before we have the board meeting on the 24th of this month. At that point, we will reread it, discuss it, and possibly sign it. So we want to get as much input as we could from everybody who has an interest in it, whether you're for it or against it, doesn't matter. Okay?
May I interject, Mr. Maine, that we're able to adopt this different schedule for this proclamation because of the fact that Bellum extended the public comment period. Originally it was intended to terminate on the 16th, Monday, and they've extended it to the 31st of the month. So that is significant.
And on the one pager that says agenda, in the middle there, we have the website address where you submit if you want to do it on your own. I know many of you have already done it. So.
Also, are you having trouble hearing all of us?
Or just me?
Dave, is it possible to turn this volume up just a little bit?
I don't have control over that.
Oh, it's Xbox over here, isn't it?
I got it. Oh, that's right.
Oh, no, that box is that one. Okay.
So, what we're going to do is individually read back and forth here on this proclamation. I will start off. It says, in the matter of opposing the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management Bones Coos Bay Offshore Wind Project, now before the Board of Commissioners, and this will be on the 24th of October, in the matter of proclaiming that Coos County is opposed to the Coos Bay Offshore Wind Project by BOEM. The Board of Commissioners makes the following findings. 1. Whereas this potentially devastating project looming 14 miles off the coast of the county is a floating wind energy project being pushed by promoters, various groups and BOEM, mostly BOEM, Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. It should be noted before we go on that I'm one of 3 commissioners that sat on the BOEM advisory for the state of Oregon. Just so you know.
Whereas electromagnetic radiation disrupts migration patterns of marine mammals and migrating salmon, and
whereas wind turbulence from the windmills eliminates plankton from the site, thus eliminating food source for whales and other plankton feeders, and
whereas NOAA, Chief of Protected Species, sent a letter to BOEM on May 13th of 22 expressing concerns about the turbine effect on the plankton, which leaves the plankton feeders without any food, in other words, the whales, basically.
and whereas blue whales feed on plankton, krill, Furnoa fisheries, and
whereas blue whales are listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Act, and
For NASA, National Space Administration, wind farms cause local warming and less participation.
and whereas the windmill blades rotate at speeds of 100 miles per hour or greater, which kills seabirds, some of which are also endangered, and
whereas it is already documented that land-based windmills kill eagles, geese, bees, bats, butterflies, etc., and
And short-tailed albatrosses, habitat is along the west coast, off our coast here, of the United States, and is listed as endangered throughout its range under the Endangered Species Act per the U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
And whereas windmills are often restricted or shut down by inadequate wind or too strong of winds, and
whereas the windmill blades have to be replaced approximately every 5 years and are buried in a landfill in Wyoming, and
whereas the main bodies of the windmills only last about 20 years, unfortunately, many defunct wind towers are left in place as a blight on the landscape due to the high cost of recycling.
and whereas windmills are prone to leaking fluids which will pollute the ocean, and
whereas the 2-megawatt windmill is made up of 250 tons of steel that require 300 tons of iron ore and 170 tons of coking coal, all mined, transported, and produced by hydrocarbons. The windmill could spin until it falls apart and never generate as much energy as when it was invested in building it. This is per Homer Dixon Carbon Ship. And
whereas the leased area will be restricted to other travel and no fishing, no commercial traffic, aviation, etc. The leased areas in the flight approach and departure path for the North Bend Airport.
And whereas, while not a concern of BOEM, we do not want to guarantee the project by having the Oregon legislature enact feed-in tariff, which guarantees that the investors can't lose their investment if something goes wrong with the project. Pacific Power rates range from 7 cents to 11 cents per kilowatt. Offshore wind energy rates will range from 54 cents to over $1 per kilowatt. So if the project goes toes up, the ratepayers, you and I, have to pay the investors. If your residential bill is currently $200 per month, then to pay off the investors, your bill would go to, at minimum, $1,500 per month. If you run a business with a $500 per month bill and you see an increase, you would see an increase to a minimum of $3,750 per month until the investors were made whole. And
whereas, while not a concern of BOEM, we do not want to pay for the onshore upgrades to the current power system, and
whereas there are only 2 offshore wind projects, Dominion Power off of Virginia and Block Island off of Rhode Island in the United States, they were financed by passing all the costs to the ratepayers.
And whereas the Virginia legislature has decided that all of the Dominion Wind project costs, including any overruns, will be passed on to the ratepayers in spite of ratepayer concerns. And
whereas the Block Island Wind project was initially rejected by the Rhode Island PUC as being an excessive cost to the ratepayers. So what did the Rhode Island General Assembly, legislature, and governor do? They changed the state law regarding the commercial reasonability of contract pricing. The Rhode Island PUC approved the project, and the ratepayers have been stuck with the higher bills ever since. Think it won't happen in Oregon? Remember, not very long ago, the governor is willing to sign on to any greenwash projects such as the cap and trade bill. And
whereas in recent years, $8.6 billion has been lost by investors in wind and solar projects. That includes a $1 billion Ponzi scheme of DC Solar, which pled guilty to in January of 20.
And whereas wind power is a greenwash delusion that has the potential to dramatically raise ratepayer power costs, destroy the local fishing industry, decimate endangered bird population, and waste taxpayer dollars.
I want to make sure it's the right place to follow, which is now therefore. Yep. Now therefore, the Coos County Board of Commissioners proclaims Coos County, Oregon is opposed to the BOEM offshore wind project, which could potentially have drastic impacts on Coos County's fishing industry, Coos County's endangered species population, and the residents of Coos County.
So, with that, back when we talked about feed-in tariff here, it was passed in Virginia and Rhode Island legislatures, and if something goes wrong with the project, the ratepayers have to make the investors whole. So I guess we should all invest in this thing because you can't lose it. Tongue in cheek. But what's more even serious is that it has already been talked about, that is cap and trade, in the Oregon legislature in the last 2 years. They're already talking about this. Imagine that. So we'll open the floor for who wants to express an opinion.
You don't mind if you just see minutes?
Yeah, mostly.
We'll be here till the second coming if we don't.
Yeah,
If it was clear, Bill, Vanessa, come on up.
I'll keep the time.
It'll be a little liberal.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
This is the one time I'll be a little liberal.
I got you on tape on that.
First of all,
Please,
my name is Vanessa Ray
from
from Myrtle Point.
school, thank you.
I was raised in North Bend. First of all, those rates, those dollar rates, we're going to create so much more homelessness here if people can't afford their power. We don't have enough jobs here as it is, high-paid jobs. So this could really affect our economy as a whole for everyone in this county. I know you guys have been working on keeping taxes as low as you can. This is just another tax, a green tax on our people here. The other one is...
Well, if I may,
Go ahead.
on your first point, you may not know this, but I've thought about it for a while. Okay, all our rates are going to explode, right? So people who can't afford that, what's going to happen maybe? Will the legislature enact so they're going to offset their bills with more taxes? Who knows? But you may end up paying for it twice. Go on.
Well, and then the other thing is job creation. Most of these, they're not telling you where they're going to be all made, where all this is, where the steel is going to come from. Is this going to be U.S. steel or is this going to be China steel? Is this all going to, right now, most of the windmills that are coming into the United States are from China. And is this really going to improve our economy here? All it's doing is feeding the green agenda. And we're not thinking about our people here. We're thinking about, we've already took out the dams that we made a lot of power that way. And we were we exported most of our power out of here down to California. Why does the burden need to fall on us as Oregonians to feed power down to California? And we pay the cost for that. So where is this power ultimately going to go? Are we going to use it? Is it going to go to industry? Can industry even afford to pay this kind of power? And we're talking not just residential, now we're talking about industry. Can we get new jobs in here, new building manufacturing with those type of rates? We won't be able to compete on an international level, let alone on a local level, or a state or a federal level. Thank you.
So, the thought about this is that do you know how much power is estimated to be generated off the one off of Coos Bay?
The one off of Coos Bay right now, the one that's no longer.
Yeah, the one I talked about on Tuesday. 1 gigawatt. Okay. Do you know how much California uses in a year? 500,000 gigawatts. Going to make any difference?
We're competing against countries that are less than 8 cents a kilowatt that have nuclear. If we go and lock ourselves into multiple years, 20, 30 years of locking into this investment for wind, it will devastate jobs here. We will basically be broke.
What will it do to the value of your home? Who's next? Yes, ma'am. And then Mary, you're next.
Hello, I'm Leslie Johnson. I am a resident of Coke Hill, and I have questions. I went over
Maybe get a
this.
little closer.
Do I I need to get closer?
There you go.
Okay, how about that?
Yeah.
Didn't we try this in this county back in the 1980s?
Pacific,
Somewhere in Whiskey Run or somewhere in Bandon?
Pacific Power tried it at Whiskey Run, yes.
Okay. Have we not learned our lesson yet?
Oh, but they were through.
Okay, what I'm concerned about is, here you have stated just some of it, that there is the cost of replacing those blades, of servicing each wind turbine. There's the cost of transporting the blades that are replaced all the way to Wyoming, where they have to be cut up in the landfill. Now, I don't know how many people here have researched this and seen that landfill, but I have. It's acres and acres and acres of these blades that have to be cut up, laid specifically into the land in order to get them in the landfill. It is extremely labor intensive. The other thing is, you did mention about the fat fluids dropping into the ocean. If this is such a green project, why is it affecting the environment? These things leak. What people don't understand is that windmills have oil to generate them. This is not a oil-free source of power. And like it's already been mentioned, none of these windmills, without having miles and miles of them, can you generate enough energy for what is really needed. So you're picking up huge costs that no one here that I know of in any part of this county can afford those kind of bills on their electric bills. I don't know who, but I haven't met anybody, and I can't afford it. So if you're already having issues with the cost of energy, just as it stands right now, where Pacific Power is hounding you about your usage, what does this say? What is this going to bring? So it's not even a matter of impacting. Of course it's going to impact industry. It's going to impact people wanting to build more. We have a terrible shortage of housing right now. Nobody is going to come here. They know that when they hear about this and that kind of cost to incur, they're going to go somewhere else. So does that hurt us or help us? The last thing I wanted to mention was, I don't know if anybody remembers, not too far back in Texas, when they had that terrible freeze, and there were wind turbines that totally froze up, and they were the source of electricity for the area. People were in a terrible, terrible way. There was nothing they could do to get those turbines started again, as long as that's the environment. Are we saying we don't have freezing temperatures here, especially with the wind chill that we have in our area? That's,
Thank you.
All right, and I'll say for the last part about it is, and I'll go sit down. Somebody has to monitor this restricted area. Are we going to assign specific people just to handle the restricted area around the wind turbines to make sure nobody crosses that line in the air or in the sea? Who's going to monitor all
We'll
that?
control it.
And does that cost get passed on to the county? Is that in our property taxes or in other taxes? Okay.
Right.
So there's a lot to think about here, far more, and I'm surprised that there aren't more fishermen here. Okay, not to mention all the people who say they're pro-environmental. And this is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Just so you know, folks, when I'm keeping the time, if your comments are interrupted by comments from one of us, then I'm stopping the clock for that so that you receive your full 3 minutes. And we'll try to stick to that 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mary Jedry Coquillo, and I would like to say that based on projects as I understand it and how the developers have presented it. I admit I haven't done a huge amount of research on that. If this project goes through, which it probably will get approval, all it is a way to allow the county to be a right-of-way for private investors to potentially use eminent domain to acquire property for the transmission lines. And unless the county or the people somehow benefit from these power purchase agreements, because this power is likely to go to California or 3 or 4 states away, it's really, we're just a right-of-way. That's all we are. If the county could negotiate a deal where we benefit as an ownership position or somehow benefit from these PPAs, I would have a different view. And or if we were actually able to use the power, which I doubt is in the works, to offset our huge trade imbalance in the county, which is partly because we import 99% of our energy. So based on that, I think, just like I feel with any centralized power production or power development, it's not a good deal. To me, it's really no better deal than the LNG pipeline running through the county. And the other thing I would throw out here real quick is when you're making comments to a regulatory agency, this is the bane of all environmentalists. They give you very finite terms that you're supposed to comply with, and those comments, because people comment about everything, they don't necessarily follow those guidelines. Everything that isn't within those parameters is tossed into a category called other. They actually list the other on here. And I would suggest some of this resolution could be shoehorned into some of the more relevant categories. But I would suggest, since you have till All Hallows Eve to rewrite it, that you actually look at their guidelines, at something like 8 or 9 things, and try to craft a resolution that complies with their guidelines. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
So you reminded me, something I had forgotten to put in here was that when I met twice now with RWE, which is a German firm, and they have presence here in the United States, they're one of the world's largest windmill groups. When I asked them if they expected the taxpayers of Oregon and whatever to pay for the onshore upgrades that they're going to need, they didn't deny that. So we're going to have to pay for that too. That thing.
So that's a little bit spurious because the PUC already compels ratepayers to pick up the waste from all energy development. So this is just another one to throw in there. But, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? David? You want to go? Nope. All right. Who wants to go? Richard? And then, you okay?
I'm going to have to get going, but I appreciate you gentlemen and your belief that I think we need to wait for technology to catch up before we start damaging the seabed of our ocean.
Do you have a couple minutes? We will hold around the
Volleyball's over, Nancy's just getting done with chemo, I got to pick her up.
Okay, all right.
She had to go to her granddaughter.
Thank you for being here.
Sorry, but yeah, I'm sorely missing it, and I'm glad that there's an extension, and maybe there'll be another meeting I can kind of learn more.
On the 21st, or at our Board of Commissioners meeting at 9:30 in the morning, we'll talk about this again.
Can you put it out in the newspaper, the Herald or Sentinel?
We will try, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Richard.
Hi, Richard Kudzinski from North Bend. No one seems to be mentioning the just straight engineering of this thing. And we're going to try and anchor something in 4,000 foot of water in the Pacific Northwest Ocean. And then, run the large copper conductors 4,000 feet down to the ocean floor. Running along the ocean seems to be kind of, done a lot. But I don't believe that this is going to be, all those towers and stuff, that they're going to really, all of them, stay anchored to the floor. The cost of doing that, just straight engineering and construction of it, I think has to be taken into account. Okay, and I have one other thing I'd like to say, kind of off topic. If you guys are going to be speaking for the people of Coos County and making proclamations and resolutions, I think you need to have input from the residents of Coos County before you present us with some sort of finished letter at the end of a meeting. So I would appreciate it when you're doing something like this to get input from us. I mean, you elected guys, you work for us. Okay, and I'd be very happy to help you write a letter, of course. But I think you need to do that beforehand, not afterwards. Anyway, the engineering, it's not going to stay tethered 4,000 foot down.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to respond to Richard for just a moment. And Richard, thank you for those comments. And the revised process that Commissioner Maine defined today does exactly what you suggested. And so I do appreciate that. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Carrie Silva, and before I start, I would like to let you know there are probably fishermen that are on the ocean. So they're wide. And I represent a lot of the fleet in Charleston. So that's why they're not here. My name is Carrie Silva. My husband John and I are co-owners of the Jeanette Marie based out of Charleston. We have hold various fishing permits, Dungeness crab, bottom fish, king shrimp, and whiting. The potential development of floating offshore winds along the Oregon coast will have lasting consequences on my family and myself. My family actively participated in the fishing industry for over 4 decades, spanning many generations. Collectively, we hold a century's worth of expertise and experience in commercial fishing. Our primary fishing ground is situated in and around the draft wind energy areas of the Coos Bay and Brookings. During an August 30th webinar held by the CPSAS to discuss the draft WIA report presented by BOEM and NCOS representatives, the meeting addressed the discussion of draft data layers and the time limitations faced by BOEM and NCOS in order to complete the draft report promptly. The report exhibited a notable omission of crucial information. Certain species were deliberately grouped together. For example, the leatherback sea turtle, the southern resident killer whale, the humpback whale America, the humpback whale Mexico, and the blue fin whale, only for the sole purpose of developing the wind energy areas. It is crucial to emphasize the significance of a request of a pause or stop in BOEM's process. According to the governor's request, she also requested a pause. Collecting the necessary data of the eventual findings. Collecting the necessary data regardless of the eventual findings, it is imperative to to implement measures aimed at safeguarding the coastal regions of Oregon, as well as the unique ocean ecosystem and its diverse marine life, upwellings, and California current is of utmost importance. I had to group my things together. Furthermore, it is essential that we protect the valuable fishing grounds for the next generation. The marine environment was created to serve as a natural habitat for marine organisms and not intended to accommodate industrial-sized wind turbines as a situated habitat. Thank you.
So you remind me of a couple more things. One is that RWE said, oh, they have the anchoring problem all solved. They're going to take huge screws and screw into the ocean floor and attach with, and they said, nylon cables about so big to attach to those, to attach to the floating barges that they're going to have the windmills on top of.
That are 1,000 feet tall with a potential 20 megawatt generator.
You're right. And also, they didn't mention that when they have all these windmills out there, there's going to be a spider web of electrical cables everywhere out there.
Yes, they have 3 electrical cables connecting to each other, and then another solid one.
And they haven't done any studies about electromagnetic radiation on migrating species, whatever, it happens to be salmon, whales, whatever.
Right. There's been some studies done in the UK on crab, where they're mesmerized by the electromagnetic field or waves, where they're mesmerized, right? They stay put. They don't go feed, they don't go mate. So there will be no Dungeness crab I'm assuming.
Right.
It's a brown crab over there, but it's a crab. There's also a study done, I believe, at UK University. I have to look at my paper. To where they tested on shrimp. So they tested these electromagnetic waves on shrimp, on so many, and then without the waves, the electromagnetic waves. And they had malformations on the shrimp. So it will affect them. And also with salmon, they don't go towards that vibration. They will drift.
You read about all the whales beaching and dying on the East Coast?
The mapping.
You know why?
Yes.
Because what they reported as sounding the ocean floor with a certain amount of energy, etc., at a certain frequency and decibel rating, they fibbed.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. It's a government agency. I don't believe
So if you have stuff, please send it to me.
I will. I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, and the footnotes that support that information is really essential.
I will see if I have that. It was omitted on a video Zoom call. They omitted that. They had to get the study done. Also, there's check into radar interference with the vessels for safety reasons, and when it's closer together, they're clustered and they can't see where it's at. When they're 3 miles away from the farm, if that's what you want to call it, they can tell that's what they are. But when they're closer to them, they cannot tell that's what they are. And if they get no power or the wind is 60 miles an hour with 20-foot seas, it's going to be kind of dangerous. And also when they start leaking in those storms, who's going to go out and fix them if they break? During that 60-mile-an-hour wind with gusts to 100, nobody.
Yeah.
It will be too late.
I was here when it was almost 200 miles an hour in the state storm.
Yes. And when those anchors, so when they're done, I guess, so what is it, a 20 to 25-year project that they want to destroy our ocean with? It's one environment. It's going to destroy the ocean. But once they're done, those anchors will stay put. They cannot take those anchors off the sea floor. So our draggers, if there's fish left, will hang up on them.
That's right. That's right. You basically destroyed that whole fishing area.
Yes,
18,000 square miles.
yes, and I'm doing this for my son. In 10 years, if he's out there, my son, my grandson is on that ocean, I have to try to do my best to stop him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, we don't look like Mike was ready to jump up here.
Good looking here, didn't
He is. I actually specifically called Mike to come and talk.
Good evening, my name is Mike Graybill, I'm from Charleston, and I've been looking into this issue for the last 4 or 5 years. I just want to advise you about the process that BOEM is going through. BOEM right now has started out with these wind energy call areas, very, very large areas. Started out with 3 call areas, Coos Bay, Abandon, and Brookings. And then in spring of last year, they removed the Abandon call area. They didn't really, I have asked what criteria they used to eliminate a call area, because the circle on the map has disappeared, and we're down to 2 of those. And I thought, well, it would be good to know what criteria they would use if we were to propose to eliminate another call area, perhaps the Coos Bay call area. Their process has moved along despite requests to pause the process. I've seen no evidence that BOEM is pausing that process. So right now they've just extended this deadline, but the deadline that they're working on right now is these draft wind energy areas, which are a much smaller portion of these original call areas. They've eliminated most of the Coos Bay call area, except for a tiny little area up in the northwest corner of the Coos Bay call, a tiny little area. It's down to the size of the city of New York. But it's still a vast area, but it's much smaller than the original area they had proposed. Those original 3 areas had a potential of 17 gigawatts of wind energy potential. They're working to develop 3 gigawatts of wind energy potential. Now, those aren't terms that I was comfortable or familiar with, but 3 gigawatts of electricity is the amount of electricity that's produced by the Bonneville Dam and the Dalles Dam combined. I grew up in Pennsylvania near the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant. The 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant produces about 800 megawatts, so just short of 1 gigawatt. There's 1,000 megawatts in a gigawatt. So what they're proposing is to industrialize the use of the ocean off of Coos Bay to produce the power that is roughly the equivalent of 3 nuclear power plants. And to do that, they would need over 200 of the world's largest turbine assemblies, those 15 megawatt turbines. Right now, the deepest installed offshore wind floating turbine assembly in the world is a place called Highwind Tampa and Highwind Scotland, where there's 11 turbines, and they're installed in 300 meters of water. The areas that are proposed for the Oregon coast are 6 times deeper than any of the existing floating wind turbines have ever been installed. So it's 6 times the depth. The largest, this Highwind Tampa has 11 turbines, but to produce 3 gigawatts of electricity, you would need 200 turbines with 15 megawatts. I've done a rough calculation on the typical depth of 600 meters out there. You would need over 1,200 miles of mooring cables, 1,200 miles. You would need 750 20-ton anchors with chain, and the assembled, and the plastic, the polyethylene line that holds the turbines in place. And then you would need over 1,000 miles of electrical conductor cables that would move with these floating turbines to go to what would a floating substation. But so far, no installed floating wind turbine assembly has ever developed a floating substation. The existing turbine array, that is the largest in the world, provides electricity to 5 offshore oil rigs in the North Sea. So there is no floating substation has been developed. And once you're at the floating substation that gathers up the power from all these individual turbines, then you have a high voltage transmission cable that goes to shore to another substation. And we've asked BOEM where those substations would be, and that's not what they're in the business of doing. They're simply in the business of leasing the ocean. They leave that to another authority to deal with that. So at that point, there would be a lease issued, and the public would still have no idea where a proposed location for a shore landing point would be until after the federal agency leases this. So I support your letter. You should, as a public body, you shouldn't be compelled to a deadline. If you're going to be addressing the deadline that is forthcoming, that's just been set back until the end of this month, then those comments will need to be focused on the draft wind energy areas. You should be at liberty to send a letter of opposition at any time, regardless of the deadline, as a public body. But if you're going to be sending a letter in response to the current process that BOEM is doing, your comments really need to be focused on the draft wind energy areas. And the comments that Carrie provided about how they've bundled groups of species together, or fisheries data is aggregated, would be very appropriate, and I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Can you talk about what you talked about at the library, about how, if I think I heard you right, because I was in Wyoming listening, and I got in on my phone, but we were talking about how BOEM, under initial studies off the coast, found that it wasn't really suitable for offshore wind project, and all of a sudden, at the end, it was wonderful.
Well, their objective is to find an area that has the least conflict. So they've developed this model. They've contracted the National Center for Coastal Ocean Science, which is a NOAA program. And I'll just point a typo out in your draft resolution. It's NOAA, not NOAH. So that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But they've relied heavily on this other federal agency to do an evaluation of least conflict. And that's the study that Carrie has referenced. And in particular, if your concerns are about cost, then I would be happy to furnish you with some comments about the cost factors that they've used to establish these feasibility areas. Because the cost factors that they use in their modeling study to determine feasibility were based on cost estimates that another federal agency did in 2017. And there's been all very recent developments in the last 6 months on the East Coast, where the cost of capital, the cost of materials has skyrocketed, and the actual cost of energy produced has almost doubled. So if you were to use the contemporary value of the cost of energy, in all likelihood, some of the feasibility that they've identified for these existing draft wind energy areas would be deemed infeasible. And we've posed that question to BOEM to say, why are you using these costs? And he said, well, if we use other costs, then we wouldn't have any wind energy areas to offer for lease. And that was the same answer that was provided for, well, if it's an endangered species, why wouldn't you rule out an area because of the presence of an endangered species? And the same answer was provided by the director of the person, Doug Doran, who was managing the lease process here in Oregon. He said, well, because we're looking to identify some areas to lease, and if we ruled out everything, then we wouldn't have any areas to offer for lease.
Something really funny. about a year and a half ago, I think, maybe 2 years ago, I was on a webinar with them, and they were just starting this process. They had a gentleman on from the Portland Audubon Society, and they wanted to know about bird strikes by windmills on endangered species, and they were talking about the short-tailed albatross, which is highly endangered. And they asked that person if they had any data about that. And it was really funny what the person said. They said, no, but couldn't the companies just grow more birds? That's exactly what he said. I have it burned into my brain, and we have a recording of him saying that. So apparently, if it's perceived as green, it's okay.
Certainly my interests are in the natural world, living resources, but when I have done my work on this, my concerns have shifted more toward feasibility, technical feasibility, have shifted toward cost, in addition to the displacement of existing economic activities. So again, for reasons perhaps other than what you may have in your resolution, I have come to my personal view is that there's other approaches to addressing renewable energy that are more cost-effective, more certain, more rapidly deployed. This is certainly will be the most expensive form of renewable energy available. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
I'd like to follow a comment to what Mike said is that the drawback to those other forms of green energy is they don't render nearly as much profit to the investors at the expense of our grandchildren.
Cool. Who wants to go next? Yes.
Pick me.
Okay, we'll pick you.
Hi, Raheem.
Raheem. Pam.
Is Mike short enough for me?
Yeah, it's.
Dan Lewis, Oak Hill. I am impressed with all this beautiful information. I have some silly questions. I understood by what I had read that these blades would travel by land in order to go out on the barges to be placed with the windmills. Am I off kilter on that thought?
Well, it depends on whether they're imported from China.
Right.
They could come from China on a large ship and then be transported on another, let's say, barge, and then assembled out in the ocean.
What helicopter is going to lift them into position?
Yeah.
So, again, what I've read would be some of them coming by land and then going, if it's going to be Coos Bay, we've got to come into our area somehow to get out there.
Right.
I wanted to know what truck was going to turn left and go down 42 South with a blade on it.
They just levitate out there, don't you know?
Oh, it's magic. Or even off the Columbia and out. I can't find anything in my brain that says they can make it to the edge of Oregon with a blade on a truck. The size that these are.
I've seen some of them in Oregon on trucks, some of the blades.
But did they ever turn left and go to the ocean?
Not that I'm aware of. They were all going in.
Or so that's my thought is this is so ridiculously not practical in some of those forms. What the effects are for the state highway department, for the traveling, for an ambulance that's trying to get somewhere to rescue somebody, for a fire department, etc.
So a couple of weeks ago, I was going up to Columbia.
Yeah.
I looked up there, and some of these windmills were stopped. Others were going. You know why they were stopped? I got to looking at them really close. This is brown stuff streaming down, and it's the oil and the gearboxes streaming out, and that's why they have them shut down. They don't last very long.
They don't last very long.
Yeah. So are they going to? Rome still hasn't addressed about oil being put into the ocean.
Into the ocean.
I mean, it's an environmental disaster if you get one drop of oil on a pond someplace. So
right.
they have how many gallons in these things? And they're gonna leak out all over the place? What?
Probably hundreds of
And
gallons.
then how many seabirds are gonna be coated with that? CRAP.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's mystery to me to how they figure they're gonna actually do this.
Well, they're picking on the Oregon coast because there's not many people of us
Right,
out there. And
we're all, I know, we're all
they don't put up as much fuss as other populated groups, let's say off of Carmel, let's say.
Right.
Lack of anything else I can think of.
I would love to see them bring one from Southern California and then go up 101 and come up to Bandon. Or, anyway, just the practicality of it, and it's just nauseating how you actually move someone over land.
Thanks.
Thank you for letting me make this little comment.
Thanks, Matt.
So, Diane, you want to be next?
I want to be next.
Okay, I thought so.
But I don't have my glasses on, borrow me cold.
Oh, you can borrow mine.
Give me an interesting read, guys. Because this isn't my testimony. This is the testimony of Leonard Krug.
Hello.
He serves as president.
Diane, should you give your name and general location where you live so we have
Oh,
all
I'm Diane Rich from North Bend.
Cool.
And my friend Leonard Krug is the president of the Oregon Anglers Alliance, a board member of the Oregon Sportsman Conservation Partnership and the Pacific Fishermen's Management Council Habitat Advisory Committee. He serves as the director of the Oregon South Coast Fishermen out of Brookings, and this testimony is on behalf of the South Coast Fishermen. Oregon has not produced a plan for offshore wind. We have set aspirational goals only, with little known as to where we are headed in regards to finances and the environment. The Oregon and Coos wind areas are projected to have a maximum output rating of 3 gigawatts, 1 for Coos Bay, 2 gigawatts for Brookings. But wait, that's 2 gigawatts at maximum rated output potential. The operational reality is 40% of maximum output. That's about 1 gigawatt. The state of California's annual electrical consumption is approximately 300,000 gigawatts. The total annual consumption for the nation is at 4,000 terawatts, or roughly 6,100 megawatts an hour. Does it make sense to move forward, placing our environment at a very high risk level for a possible return of 1 gigawatt? There's a feed-in tariff clause incorporated into the contract with federal and state governments that guarantees investors to be compensated at above market price. Additionally, the investor will pass on such costs to the citizenry as brings the power on shore. Upgrading electrical infrastructures to accommodate increased loading and installing smart technology to allow for wind generation to be integrated with the national grid. And then the taxpayer ratepayer will be fiscally responsible for costs associated with salvaging storm-related damages or underproduction of generation. If you're an investor, this is a financial dream that can only be realized by a union of government and private industry. If you're simply a ratepayer or a taxpayer, it's a huge financial liability and will likely be a hardship. One need only to look at the East Coast to know that this is exactly what's happened to the taxpayers and citizens. Therefore, in mind, ratepayers will certainly be on the hook to pick up the tab for the rapid increase in the cost of materials, increased cost of capital, and last but not least, the profits that the wind energy giants have built into their cost of doing business. So we can commend our commissioners for this proclamation, and we hope that other counties along the coast will join you with their own proclamation. We've been contacting all the county commissioners from Henry to be sure that they are pushing towards that end
so we can have a united effort of all the counties on the coast of Oregon to stop. Thank you.
So I would hope that you'd have more effect than I did, because I sent it to Douglas County, Lincoln County, and Tillamook County. They didn't get a response at all.
Lane said positively, absolutely.
I didn't contact Lane, but
Has
it
so
was Douglas,
many, we have so many
Lincoln,
locals in Prairie pushing
Tillamook.
this forward that they feel strongly that they can get a proclamation there. We're hung on Douglas, you know, the situation there. We're trying to get them to go too. If they can get unanimous, we want that, of course. But we know that all this matters, and what you've done here, you know, really, Lincoln was first, but they didn't react the way you did. Lincoln got their proclamation, Lincoln County, put it in several months ago. But now if you'll all, you know, unite, this is wonderful.
I was curious why I didn't get any reaction from Lincoln County, but when I sent it
Because
to
they've already got one.
Huh?
They've already got
I
a
know, but they didn't
proclamation.
send anything back about they'd already done it or anything at all. Nothing. Silence.
Well, all the fishermen right now are in Alaska at the conference, so maybe some of their commissioners are too.
I don't know.
So I don't know, but they're in already, so we're going to go there.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Just as an informational update, I will mention, pursuant to Diane's comments, that I received an email from Commissioner Trost in Curry County today, and they are definitely on board in opposition, and we're looking now at forming a coalition of counties.
Well, that's good, because I sent them our proclamation Tuesday, and I haven't heard back from any of the three of them.
Well, they just don't like you.
Oh, that's good. Okay. He what? You? Who's next? Yes, ma'am. Come on in.
Susan Kirkendall, Coos Bay, and I have an odd question for you. The rate increases that have been discussed, which will devastate me as a, you know, on a fixed income at this point in my life. I have to sell, and I don't think anybody would want to buy my place because of what will occur. My question is this rate increase for all of the state, or is this rate increase just confined to the coastal communities, counties? Because if this is going to hit the entire state, I would think there are a lot of counties that are going to start wanting to pay attention to what's going on over here. Because if you live in Baker, you think, well, whatever, that's Coos Bay. I don't go over there that often. It doesn't affect me. But if this rate increase affects all of Pacific Power, and that's my question. I hadn't even considered that being an across-the-board rate increase.
They've never said it, and I haven't ever been able to find out. Whether it's local, or whether it's statewide, whether it includes California, Washington.
Does it hit?
Nobody knows.
The impression that I have gotten is that those inputs to the grid, the costs are averaged out. And then of course marked up for profit and whatever other margin they need on top of that. So you may not see specifically the rate increase that's mentioned here directly in our area, but as an average, I do believe that grid is sectioned into state areas.
I would think that the other counties should start paying attention to this too, if they don't want to see the same hardship come up.
I believe this theater should be full tonight.
I'm a little disappointed, but actually it's nice to hear the voices that are here.
You will not believe how many people I've talked to in the last 2 years about this, and they have no clue at all what I'm talking about. None.
Yeah, no one did.
And when I tell them about the feed and tariff part, they're going, no, that can't be. I said, well, it's already been talked about twice in your Oregon legislature, but they're not my Oregon legislature, I can tell you that.
Just on the little flip side is the bird strikes. It makes me sick to my stomach to think what's going to happen to the birds as they start their migratory path. because they are sucked into those blades.
Oh, yeah. The design sucks them into it.
Yes.
They can't avoid it once they get a certain distance away.
Well,
And that includes all of the pollinators, the bees,
yes,
the butterflies, all that stuff.
anything in the migratory path, and having worked with the airline at a PDX, people would say, why can't they just avoid the blades? They can't.
No.
If they get within that range, they are going to be drawn in. So, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Who else? Yes. Jan, right?
Yeah, I'm Jan Fuller I live in Charleston, and there's been some very good comments made today, and I want to thank you guys for having this idea to to send a resolution vote. But one of the things I just want to remind and reiterate what we've heard today is that BOEM's responsibility is to lease the ocean to make money for the U.S. Treasury.
Right.
They will not be the entity that makes decisions. Once it leaves the ocean to a company, it will be the company that makes the decisions about how all that stuff, the blades, the oil, and all of that will take place. So it is important in this resolution to make sure that you make the resolution one that is targeted to what BOEM is asking you to do, to reply. I mean, you can send other letters and things, but the resolution, if you're going to submit it to the BOEM comment period, needs to be focused on why the wind energy areas, the WEAs, are not a good idea, and why we should not have the WEAs off of Oregon. And Carrie has already given you some really good information about how and Mike has too, about how the wind energy areas how they decided where they should be. And I would encourage you to go to the BOEM site and have a look at some of the comments that are already there from entities that are being specific about the wind energy areas, and not about things like recycling the blades and things like that, because BOEM doesn't give a damn about that. That's not their responsibility. Their responsibility is to lease the ocean to someone who wants to then develop the wind in the ocean. And so we're at a time now where if we want to stop this, we have to give BOEM good reasons for why they should not lease the wind energy areas. And it's not because of how all the mechanics of this wind is going to happen. And so, although there's some really good reasons in here, some of them I would suggest, need to be more refined and based more on the fact that the NCOS study has not looked at all of the data. There's lots of the data that they did not use. The NCOS study has looked at things that they have lumped together, for example, the endangered species things, and just those kinds of comments. And you'll find those kinds of comments in some of the submissions that already happened to BOEM. And you can also talk to some of the people like the fishing industry who can give you information about things like one of the wind energy areas, the Coos Bay one, apparently is a Dover sole larval area, for example. And that kind of thing is what BOEM is going to listen to, not the rate stuff. They don't care about that. Right. They just care about leasing the ocean to make money for the U.S. Treasury. Because as we no longer, as we wind down oil and gas leasing in the ocean, they have a mandate to make that $7 billion that now goes from BOEM to the U.S. Treasury. So thank you very much for putting the resolution together. but I'd like for you to think about how to respond more carefully to what Bob is asking you to respond to. In this instance, certainly sending other pieces of information at different times, it would be a good idea, but this is a really specific time to say why the wind energy areas should not be part of those sort of mandates at the moment. So thank you.
Dan, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are there people within BOE who will pay attention to things like you mentioned about the Dover Soul?
Who knows?
Or do we have to go elsewhere?
Well, I don't think it makes
There's
sense to
political
go.
pressure on that.
I don't think it makes any sense to go anywhere to vote unless you talk to, our federal representatives and the governor. I mean, if Oregon would come out and say, we don't want this, we don't want these, maybe Boone would listen. Wyden and Berkeley would come out and say, don't do this. Maybe Boone would listen. But then Boone has a mandate from the federal government to do this. And so, we're sort of peanuts in this play. So I don't think this question is...
Bo was already ignored NOAA and their chief person who is on the endangered species for NOAA.
Say that again.
For NOAA, Bo was ignored the person from NOAA who's already told them that these turbines destroy the plankton, which those endangered species, the whales, etc., feed on.
Well,
they ignored them.
They don't actually destroy the plankton. What the turbines do is they alter the wind.
Right.
And the wind is responsible for a physical phenomenon called upwelling, where nutrient-rich water comes from the bottom of the ocean and fuels the food chain. And so it doesn't kill the plankton in that respect. What it does possibly, and again, this is an area that we don't have any information about. It's just models. We don't have any factual information. But what it does is that it probably alters the composition of the plankton, the availability of plankton, but it does not kill. The wind turbines do not kill
I
plankton.
use that in a general, non-scientific term. It alters the upwelling, which then if you don't have the nutrients, you don't have the microinvertebrates to feed on it.
Yeah, it doesn't stop the upwelling.
But it really alters the whole surface.
Yeah, we don't know actually what it does, and that is one of the reasons you could use for why it's not modeled in the NCOS study, the upwelling part. They don't have any data to put in. The NCOS study can only use data, and if we don't have data, then it doesn't go into the NCOS study. And there are a large number of things where we don't have data, and there are also quite a few layers of data that NCOS hasn't had time to put into their study, and we don't know what those layers are at this point.
So for me, if they don't have the data and they're forging ahead, they're possibly going to destroy things. So that doesn't make any sense to me. We're just going to go ahead and collect our money and the heck with everything else, and so what? It destroys the whole fishing industry off the coast.
Don't forget, though, it's responsible for
Yeah, I know.
the ocean.
When I brought up about the feed-in tariff and online, onshore upgrades and all that stuff, we don't care about that. That's what they said.
It's not their mandate to deal with that.
All I'm concerned with is leasing it out
Correct.
and walking away.
Yeah, and then the companies that go for the lease, we can only hope that no company will actually, this goes through, that no company will actually get a lease or want to lease it. That's one of our fallbacks, but it would be nice to stop the wheels before that happens.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who else? Rob?
Very good.
Anybody else after Rob? Jump up and down, yes, sir.
Rob Taylor from Mandan. I want to thank the gentleman up there who had an immense amount of information that I haven't heard anywhere from anyone else, including the experts at the OEM BOEM. And the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, those two people were saying, the lovely lady with the beautiful accent who just came down here. Now that we have more time, I don't know diddly about wind turbines, but I know a government boondoggle when you see a boondoggle, and this is a government boondoggle. And anyone who wants to see how bad this boondoggle is going to get, I just drove from Amarillo all the way to Albuquerque, and from Amarillo to the Texas state border was nothing but the ugly wind turbine. I don't know how you can make West Texas even uglier than it was, but they have succeeded in doing so. And so, before we do this to one of the most pristine places in the world, everything I've heard makes no sense unless you take it into the contrast of what this last lady who said came up here, and even Mary Jedrick came up here and alluded to it, and which is mind-blowing that me and Mary are on the same issue about something. So this should tell people right there that there is a serious problem here. So now that you have time, we talked about at the county commissioners meeting on voting for this proclamation at the end of this meeting.
Well, we're going to hold off on that until...
Thank you. Thank you, because you got now until the 24th, and I think just like they said, because BOEM wants our comments focused on a specific area, that's what you need to direct that proclamation to, and then we need to address it from there, and any ancillary concerns we can add on later, because you can make as many comments and send as many letters as you want. This is a 7-year process. Right? This is what BOEM said. They're in the start of this 7-year process. And I imagine that after the next 7 years, what's happening off the coast of New Jersey and Massachusetts and the whales and the plankton, the crab, and all the birds that are getting killed out there, I think we're going to see a huge turnaround just because of the people who are uniting who would normally be on two different ends of the aisle. We see a caustic project from both different levels. And once again, what Mary alluded to, the windmills are just the beginning. As in Texas, in West Texas, you've got all of that power, and yes, it's creating low-cost energy for those people there. And it is pretty low-cost energy. Of course, that's not adding in all the other costs.
You forgot all the subsidies. But
all the subsidies, so you're not adding in the taxes that you're going to have to pay for, the maintenance, the destruction of the windmills themselves. All of that is going to be contributing to those costs on top of the electricity. So they're looking at the cheap electricity bills, but the problem is that they're generating all of this electricity, and they can't get it out of West Texas because they're going to need billions, probably trillions of dollars to transmit that energy across to the bigger cities in Texas. And so all of this is going to take eminent domain. And they're not talking about this eminent domain because BOAM isn't on land. And they've taken 110 ports, and they've given those 110 ports that $36 billion they're promising those ports for the power infrastructure of transmitting that energy just to the ports. But they're not talking about the back end of that from going from the ports on. And that's going to be the big cost of this whole project. So I ask you, I'm glad you're going to put a hold on this because I think you're meeting on the 24th. At that point in time, like I said, you'll have plenty of time to, and by the way, Deb, thanks for writing this resolution. Yeah. And you were the best commissioner I ever voted for. And so we,
Package deal.
package deal, that's what it was. And so, we just got to play by their game. You know how people who are environmentalists, who have played this game on things that we were for, like the LNG, I was still against the eminent domain, but yet they were able to take out that LNG project using their game, the rules of the game, and that's what they were able to do, and that's what we need to do. We need to play smart. And like Diane said, we've already contacted the commissioners of other counties. Lincoln County has already passed one. I don't know how specific it is, but now we're going to have to talk to them in the next couple of days and tell them that they have to write those proclamations to be specific to the criteria that BOEM is asking people to respond on. And so, thank you for the time, and good seeing you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob.
Woo!
And there we go. Good evening, gentlemen. Marty Kirkman in Oregon. So a couple of things. Your 100-mile-an-hour wingtip speed, if it's a 100-foot blade going 1,000 RPM, it's going 120 miles an hour at the tip of that blade. These blades are a lot bigger and a lot, so if they're going a lot longer, that means they're going a lot faster. They're probably going faster than 1,000 RPM.
I minimized it a bit, and they go from anywhere from 100 to 200.
Yeah, I was just doing quick back of the book math here. Wind farms like that really screw with Doppler radar. As a pilot, there were areas in the Bay Area when I flew around the Oakland and San Francisco area where it constantly looked like a thunderstorm was imminent because all the wind turbines were screwing with the Doppler radar. Because the blades go around, the Doppler radar sees the changes going on and says, oh my goodness, there's a thunderstorm right there.
Interesting.
So, and then as far as investment goes, I was probably the one person that knew how to make money in the stock market all the time because I ran trading systems. Other than that, investors make money and lose money. The fact that we have to cover their losses is just, I mean, it's impossible. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yep. When's the government in the process of like making investors whole? Well, and let's not get into that, but Congress. And let's see. Oh, and then Altamont. One point I used to live down in Oakland, California. If you drive from Oakland to Tracy, California, you go through the Altamont Pass. Altamont Pass has 200 to 300 wind turbines. And when you drove through there, sometimes they'd be stopped because it was too windy. Sometimes they'd be stopped because of maintenance. But more often than not, you drive through there and you'd see 80% of them not turning. And it's just, for them to say, oh, we're going to create a gigawatt of power, I'm like, well, if the wind blows all the time at the proper speed, yes, but it never does. So
now, the thing you may not know, that some years ago, there was a company that came in to monitor the wind on the ridge line from the Beaver Hill Road that goes to Charleston.
Yeah.
And right there at the intersection of Whiskey Run where it starts out the hill, they had a line of towers all the way up towards Charleston on the county forest property. They found that it was either too much or too little, so they totally went away. Didn't want their wind towers on that ridge line.
But at least it's nice that it's right next to the landfill area, so when the blades go bad, you stay up next door.
Yeah, but what I told them is, it's like the Germans found out, it was schizophrenic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's about all I had to say. Thanks so much for your efforts, and thanks for having this meeting so that more people can participate, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else want to jump up? Okay, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. And some of you, I know Jim, Mike, and others, get a hold of me and send me your data. I appreciate it.
Well, perhaps I did receive some.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did receive some comments that I think are very difficult are against this, and I think we should include those.
You got some emails?
Yes, got them. So one of them doesn't have a lot of facts. It just says, why in the world would you be in opposition to a project in Coos County that would bring in much needed jobs? I thought the job of the county commission was to look out for the economy of the county. If you oppose this project, you would definitely not get my vote next election. We need jobs in the county, not commissioners who stand in the way of bringing money to the county. I think that's against our proclamation. Another one, I write in support of the Bureau of Energy Management Plan to construct a wind energy project off the coast of Southern Oregon to generate electricity for the citizens of the Pacific Northwest. The floating wind turbines will be about 20 miles offshore and thus not visible from the coast. This distance from shore will reduce the impact on salmon and most birds. The harm of these wind turbines on marine life will be much less than the impact of a warmer ocean if we continue to burn fossil fuels at current rates. Offshore wind energy is one of the tools we have to help us reduce emissions of greenhouse gases in the coming decade. I encourage citizens of the Southern Oregon coastal region to contact BOEM and provide them with guidance for our energy future. This one goes quite long. It basically talks about the need for jobs. It talks about the conflicting science coming from both sides of the issue. Talks about concern about impact on the ocean and the fishermen. And it goes on to say that there's a lot of rhetoric flying around. I don't see a lot of facts. And his final statement is, having said all that, my vote is to not take a position on offshore wind until we have more facts, then make a decision and recommendation based on facts, not who is yelling the loudest. I thought it important to read that into the record. It's been provided, and I think if we left that where we leave it out, we could be chastised for that.
One more, Vanessa has a comment, then we'll...
We all have to come up there to the mic and say who our name is and where we're from. So who are those people that said those?
Yeah, good point. That's an excellent, correct point.
Yeah. The first one, let's see, I read about the one that said we should be ashamed for not suggesting this, is David Hodgson's son, and I don't know where he's from. The second one, who wrote actually in support of it, not just chastising us for being against it, is Chris Luecki of Bandon. He's a sincere person. The last one is Ron Cooch, and he's either for it or against it. He just said, get the facts.
Okay. Yes, sir?
Howard Bowles, Bandon, Oregon. You just brought up a point, and you talked about jobs. Well, before you have jobs, you better think about having affordable housing for people who live here. There's a housing shortage now in all of the counties. And you're talking about establishing jobs. How are you going to accomplish that? It's not going to happen until you get housing here. And that's a major point. Or you can think about rent jobs here. And this wind energy project, have you been around California? And the deserts, the highways, 580 from the area, not just a few hundred, 200 or 300 windmills, several thousand. And most of them do not run. A lot of them are disarray, disrepair, and it costs millions to get rid of them, more than investment to put them in place. And that needs to be put forward too. Thank you.
Thank you, that's an important point. Yeah, thank you, Howard. And actually, that was one of the points that I made in response to that gentleman's email this afternoon, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Most of the jobs that this project would bring to the area are not going to be jobs for local people. No. They're going to be jobs that are specialized people who are brought in for the project. They're going to need housing while they're here, and then they're going to go away after the installation. And that was one of the points that I made. And you're not talking about the jobs that are going to live in the natural industry. Right. That's right. Okay. All the best. You're going to tourism too at the same time. Yeah. Because you're going to put those wind turbines in during good weather. So Bandon do all their tourism for hotels and all that kind of stuff. There's not going to be enough to house those people for their jobs during good weather. Say the drop. Do you have something?
Dino Vander, I want to thank you guys for putting on this gathering tonight. Unfortunately, I haven't heard one comment. What is BOEM going to do for us? Other than drain us, complicate our oceans, pollute, lived on the ocean my whole life, or contingent to it. I moved to Bandon because of its pristine environment, and it has been that way so far the last 35 years I've been here. This idea, just because it's 20 miles offshore, won't affect us? What? They're going to start closing. Well, I can't even sail across it from what I understand, and I will do water sailing if I ever get a big boat again. But to be restricted, tied down, for what? Where is the benefit? I haven't heard one positive comment. I recommend you sign this as soon as you can. Let's get this resolution going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One last comment by me. That's my personal opinion, not the board. Is that, okay, we submit our comment, they still ignore us. The only thing that's going to stop is if we gather the counties, the cities, the ports, the tribes, etc. together, and we file a class action lawsuit on their utilization and non-scientific studies of the ocean they want to destroy. That's the only way they're going to pay attention. Yeah. No matter what we say, they're going to go, oh, that's nice, and off they go again. They don't care. My personal opinion. Yeah. The only way it's going to happen is if we file a lawsuit and go after them. They have to pay attention to that. Just my personal thing. I've been thinking about that for a while. I'm going to take a page out of the handbook of some of the environmental groups that are successful on that. Give them, they go to the they go to the courts, and the courts slap them one. And by the way, if you don't know, during the Obama administration for the 8 years, the environmentalists were going to court, etc., against the federal government and all kinds of things, right? If the federal government settled out of court or the environmental groups won, the environmental groups got all of their attorney fees paid for. You know what the amount was? No. $7 billion. $7 billion.